Hello, Sally Henderson, high stakes leadership mentor and creator of The Real Method, bringing you chapter 6 of my 8-part series for leaders stepping into the role of CEO for the very first time. Today, we're looking at how to avoid the sinking sand of role creep. Role creep is something I see happening too many times with senior leaders, especially in the role of CEO when they've stepped up from within an organization. It's when you hang on to your old identity, your old skills and talents to make you feel more comfortable in a new role that you've never done before. It's tempting, isn't it, to go back to being the expert in the room, the person who everyone trusts to pull something amazing together because you've got deep experience in X or Y. However, when you become CEO for the first time, you want to focus on that one job and do it brilliantly, as opposed to letting your role creep to compensate and to leak into other people's domains. I'll give you an example. I was talking to a CEO who'd been promoted internally, but this also applies to people coming in from the outside, where they were really suffering from the sinking sand of role creep. They were going back to the job they used to do to help. And they were kidding themselves actually that this was in service of their growth and in the organization. And I helped point out to them, actually by doing that, they were stalling their growth now that they were in the new role of CEO. But also they were holding other people back because they couldn't fully get their hands around that old job because the new CEO kept interfering, albeit coming from a very positive intention of helping. Classic case of role creep, which means that you're knackered, quite frankly, because you cannot do two jobs, okay? You can only do one job as CEO brilliantly. The thing around people who get promoted into the CEO role is often you're naturally a high performer, obviously. So therefore you're very good at juggling. And also you probably get a lot of satisfaction from being in demand, from being in a busy role. And to a point, that works well as positive stimulation. There's a danger though when you become a CEO, it can tip over into exhaustion because you're not looking after your role first and your needs first by overreaching and wanting to help other people by seeping into their roles and, as I said before, their domains. So I'm going to take you through a few points that I hope can help. So I go back to my trusty post-it note so I can keep my video brief for you. I'm going to sound like a broken record here for anyone who's watched this series. And again, I'm going to call out some really obvious things, but trust me, it's these things that get missed all the time when I'm working with high performers just like you. When you're stepping into being a new CEO for the first time, just make sure your role is clearly defined, clearly agreed across the different stakeholders, and then clearly communicated. Because that means you know where you should focus, but where your boundaries lie in terms of not letting your role creep into that sinking sand of getting involved in other areas. Picking up in point 2 around boundaries, there's a real art and power from learning to say no well. And the thing around saying no is if you do let yourself role creep and then you suddenly think, oh my God, I'm drowning here, it's much harder to say no later when you've already let your role creep into other areas where you really shouldn't be focusing on anymore. You know, the classic down in the weeds. So say no to protect your boundaries so you can put your focus into the right areas. It's also going to make your home life happier because when you're letting role creep happen, what suffers as a consequence? Often it's the time, energy, and capacity you have to offer the people at home who are also supporting you, but equally have needs from you. And they don't really probably care that you're a first-time CEO. They want you in that identity privately that will be depleted if your role is creeping. Have the confidence to let go, to grow. It is too tempting to stick to what we know, to those comfort blankets, like I was saying with my first story about that CEO who just wasn't letting go when they got promoted. You know, I refer to bucketing up your job if you've been watching this series. So go back to those 5 buckets that you're putting against your first time CEO role position. Are they accurate? Are there any, in honesty, that actually are better suited to the role you've come from rather than the role you're now inhabiting and will be growing within? Knowing where your buckets are helps you again have boundaries, helps you to say no, stops the sinking sand of role creep. And now I'm going to take you into a practical tool called the SKE Self-Audit. It's a tool I use in the reveal module of the Real Method, and I find it just gives people such greater knowledge about something I refer to as their career product. Because if you know how you want to be growing and where your skills, knowledge and experience, SKE, need to be focused for your own growth, because often as a CEO, your growth gets at the bottom of a long list, this tool will really help achieve that. And it will help in terms of your ability to mentor and grow your people more effectively, and so on in the company. And the tool works like this. You have 3 concentric circles. In the inner circle, you're going to put the skills, knowledge and experience that you could give a masterclass in off the bat, okay? Your A star, skills, knowledge and experience. In the middle circle, you're going to put your developing skills, knowledge and experience. So you're not quite masterclass level, but you're definitely not completely new to them. And you probably guessed the outer circle, the third circle, it's your new skills, knowledge or experience. What is it that you haven't yet gained that actually will serve you really well as growing as a CEO? That is a new skill, knowledge and experience. Now, given you've taken on CEO role for the first time, your inner circle may be smaller and your middle and your outer circle larger because you're at the beginning of a new career step. Once you've defined and mapped out your circles, you can get peer perspective to see how other people view your talent and your skills and your growth areas, and also where you're already an expert. It's just going to give you that ability to focus on moving forward as opposed to clinging on to what you know from the past. And therefore, you're going to avoid the sinking sand of role creep. The SKE self-audit, I find, just really enables people to move forward much quicker because it's visual, it's simple, you don't have to write a lot of words. It's my modern take on the personal development plan, and it's easy to refer to. And it's also very easy to compare and contrast what other people think you should possess in those different circles as first-time CEO in that organisation. So it's also a great tool to avoid unnecessary conflict. And there's lots of ways that SKE self-audit can work in terms of mapping resources and putting together really effective training plans, but today is not about that. And my final tip, practical tip to help you avoid sinking sand of role creep is to, once you've got your SKE self-audit, compare that to your agile job spec that we talked about in chapter 3. And where do you then need to be focusing on? How can you plan your growth? Because just by mapping that helps you be much more confident, clear and committed to what your job is and what your job isn't as CEO, and you don't then have the role creep. Now, what I'm sharing with you, I really am aware sounds so blooming obvious, but I just encourage you, get curious, see if you can define your role, if you have boundaries in place that you do uphold really well, if you've let go and you're focusing on growth, and if you've got a really strong knowledge of your career product, that means you know what your new skills are, but also where your master skills lie in really accelerating other people's growth. And how does that compare with your role, and is it working together really well? Because sinking sand of role creep, as I said right at the beginning of this quick video, is tiring, and let's help you avoid it. The best way to do that, I would say this: have a good coach, have a good mentor. I will see you for chapter 7, the penultimate one, and we'll be talking about why leaders should eat first, and I'll see you soon. Please do share this series. It's here to help. Please do support. Thank you. Bye-bye.